Hi.
Hi, Judy.
Thank you so much for doing this. I'm happy to see you.
I'm happy to see you too. I'm always happy to see you, even if it's the second time in the day.
I wanted to start a conversation with you today that I was thinking of a person or their thinking evolving, but maybe it's more reflections on life. Let's see where our conversation goes, and we can title it after the fact. But I guess I'd like to ask you, I'd like to open by asking if you had a favorite period of your life.
And I think that different periods have their different pleasures. Um, I can think of the 2 months that I spent crisscrossing the United States alone at the end of the year that I took off college. It's just a marvelous, marvelous time. A little scary being on my own, far away from everybody, not having a whole lot of resources or a reliable car. Um, but it was a great time. I do not want to repeat that. You know, I think back that, I remember sometimes because I didn't have much money, um, I'd pull into a gas station um, toward the evening, buy a couple of gas station sandwiches for dinner. And then I'd say, listen, I'm just on my way to California, whatever. Um, is it okay if I just pull in behind the gas station and sleep in my car? Maybe it was just the luck of the draw, the luck of which places I picked. I never got refused, and I never became endangered. I I must have, in the course of that 2 months, must have spent at least 10 nights sleeping in my little car behind a gas station. Nobody, nobody was not bad to me. I think I must have been out of my mind. And now, I mean, do I think, was that great? Yeah, it was great. Do I want to do it? No. So there are a lot of periods. The period when your husband, when David and Rachel were little and growing up, I loved that. And so many things about it were wonderful. If, you know, your children needed my help on a more active basis than they do, you know me, Judy, I would do as best I could, but I wouldn't want to be in your role just because it was fun when I was in it. So maybe one of the nice things that I've been able to learn is all things happen in context, and it's not really ducking the question to recognize that lots of important questions have many different answers. And they even have different answers from me. And my guess is if I ask some of my 80-year-old neighbors here, they might also have many different answers, many of which wouldn't agree with mine. But that's okay.
I find it a comforting thought that there's something to be cherished in each season,
Yeah.
and life is sort of wonderful, I suppose, as it unfolds in all the different ways that it does. Um, let's talk about what you may have changed your mind about over time. Um, is there something that you were once sure about, but you no longer believe?
The answer to that is, oh, sure. I'm trying to see if there's anything that I was sure about that actually matters. Um,
It's sort of a tough one to come up with out of.
yeah. I'm not sure if I believe this. So I'm searching because I'd like to be able to say something responsive to what I take it is in fact a very good question. I have a feeling that the things that I have believed that I think of as fundamental, um, I still do. But maybe that's because things, what does fundamental mean? So, for instance, um, for a lot of reasons, some bad, I've always believed that it's really good to be an intellectual. And I'm using that as a noun now, not as an adjective. It is good to be intellectual, and it is good to be an intellectual. Um, but I think, and I strove for that, in part, as you know, because, in the apartment I grew up in, we had the encyclopedia in the kitchen, in the area we ate in, and the dictionary and an almanac, and there was dinner table conversation, and it was, well, go look it up. And so, the more I could engage in things of the mind and demonstrate that I was mastering them, the more it seemed to me that I was doing what my parents wanted, and it was a way of getting love. But as you also know, my parents didn't just say, "Oh, good for you, Eric." They always competed with me. So if I got something, their aim was going to be to top me. And then when the day came that the first of those things occurred in which they couldn't, I mean, I felt such guilt, because how could I make my parent feel bad? I mean, how could I let myself make my parent feel bad? And yet, the only way I could win their love was by being to excel at this. And then, if I excelled, instead of saying, "Oh, good for you," it was, hmm. So, those kinds of experiences led me to understand that being intellectual and being an intellectual, has contextual limits, that sometimes you really don't have to let the world see, or any other particular person see, what's going on in your mind. Sometimes what's much more important is to see what's going on in their mind and respect it and make a place for it. Um, but I don't think I waited until I was 80 to come to that recognition.
I see. I see. Yeah, that's interesting on a lot of levels, right? But um, I'm going to touch upon now something that we have talked about before, which is the thought that are there decisions that mattered more than you realized at the time?
Yeah, well, for me, the most famous one in my life, as you know, is deciding to marry Mom, because I didn't do it thoughtlessly. I don't mean I was just infatuated and said, "Let's get married," and she foolishly said yes, and off we went. Um, I mean, I did think about her, and I knew that she made me feel good, and that she was charming, and that she was intelligent, and that she was beautiful, and um, that she was a warm and supportive person. Um, and that we had, cultural connections. I mean, we both grew up in sort of secular Jewish homes. We met at college, so we had this shared, experience there. Um, but as you heard me say, that she was honest, that she was loyal, that she was tolerant, that she was selfless, that she was forgiving. I never asked if any of those things were true. When I met her, when I was courting, when we married, I mean, none of those came up. But over time, I've realized that those other qualities, they were much more important than the fact that she had gorgeous long brown hair, or So I made a decision, and it was much more important than I realized because I did not realize the enormity of the decision to get married because I made the decision on the wrong basis.
And when you think about your grandkids and your great grandkids, would you advise them to look for some of those other qualities, or what might you advise them to look for in a life partner?
Well, there there are some generalities that I think probably you should look for on the assumption that you're looking for a life partner, not just somebody. That term that you just used is very special. A business partner is one. I've collaborated on many volumes, and I've had different collaborators for different things, and those are intense and important relationships, but they didn't extend into other areas, right? A life partner is somebody that you want to be able to either just stand by and watch nicely while you're doing something else, or chime in there and help, or whom you want to help, or whom you want to, I mean, regardless of the activity or the issue in your life. That's huge. So for myself, if you want it to be able to extend the whole way, you want honesty. Ideally, I think people should be honest with themselves. So if you meet someone who does not understand their own limitations, they have a misunderstanding of who they are or what they care about, they may wind up being dissatisfied. They may wind up, you know, twisting around to make a life that they think they want, but or they do want, but they can't achieve. I mean, um, I mean, we're both old enough. Um, how you feel about one area of your life often shapes how you think you feel about other areas of your life, right? So you get up in the morning, you feel ooky, and suddenly the person you talk to is a pain in the neck because I just want to have the day alone. Why can't you just know that automatically? I think you and I are lucky in that we recognize those options, those possibilities, and we don't do it. But if you want a life partner, you need somebody who is not going to be leaking over this into that. And if it does, you need to be accepting because it's a reasonable thing to happen and help talk them through it. And if it doesn't work, just tolerate it. Tomorrow will be another day. I think we need people who have that. I think we need people who don't have addictions. Um, and they could be of many kinds. But I think that someone who is addicted to a drug or to adventure or to making money, anything that you can say, this is so big that it can't be stopped without that person feeling that their life is no longer valuable. That's not a good life partner because then you're hooked on somebody else's addiction. Um, if you share the addiction and you're lucky, it can work out. But for lots of people, even if you share the addiction, it won't work out because A may be a better actor than B. And hey, we don't match anymore. And so I guess I'm saying honesty, clarity, ability to know yourself and to accept somebody else. I'd say those are really important.
Those are pretty strong. Yeah. When you were having your conversation with David, you mentioned marriage, family, Judaism being of the things you value the most and that have remained consistent in your value system throughout life. Are there things you would add to that list of things you value most?
I guess two come to mind. One is, in fact, the life of the mind. Um, I'm not saying other people have to value it, um, but I do. I think I'll get back to it. And the other is respectful acceptance of other people. By acceptance, I mean an attempt to genuinely understand. I don't mean to agree. So, to take a simple example, um, I can understand why my father was in his whole life. It was many good things. I'm very grateful for my parents, but one of the realities is that he was immature and he never did grow far enough, in part because he let himself go to work for his own father and never really got out from under the shadow of grandpa's strong personality. And even though my father was very capable in many ways, um, you can't expect it from Joey. Joey was sick. Well, maybe in fact Joey was sick in his childhood, but he wasn't sick, in his 40s, but he was still working for his father. Um, and I understand that. Um, I'm not angry at the things that he may have done with or to me that are bad, and they're all intellectual or emotional. He didn't physically abuse me in any way. Um, but the fact that I understand them means that I'm not going to spend my time being angry at him. I'll be sympathetic about it. That doesn't mean that my childhood was any easier. It means that I know why that aspect of it wasn't easy. And, eventually I got to say, that's what the past was. I hope I didn't do anything like that to my kids and yours. Um, so yeah, being able to see other people's viewpoints. And yet, sometimes I see it, I get it, I disagree with it. But that doesn't make you evil. There are things that could make you evil. I mean, I could understand why Stalin was Stalin and still think that Stalin was evil. I mean, but that's a separate judgment. It's not how you are with the people in your life. But that first thing, intellectual, it matters to me. The life of the mind really matters. And I'd like to make a little bit of a sociobiological argument here. You know, we're both parents and we both love teaching kids. I mean, I remember all those things you put up on the walls. So, I mean, you were great at all kinds of things, Judy. It was just,
Oh gosh.
I know it was wonderful. I mean, every time I come to your house and I see now those places are clean, but I remember all those little drawings. I mean, and they changed as the boys aged. I mean, you were so thoughtful about how you kept them going and progressing. I think that human beings are by far the most successful species in the world, if you measure it as biologists tend to by biomass. As a single species, we got it. Um, I can actually give you specific numbers on that I happened to be working on a week or so ago. Um, but that success comes because we are social. if a human being were born and dropped in the woods, it would be dead in a day, right? I mean, we're social. The greatest single tool for social coordination is language. Although clearly our brains work before we have language, I have never met anybody who could really remember what it was like to think in a pre-linguistic way. Even Helen Keller, in her autobiography, is not able to convey what it was like to think before language. The complexities of thought and the ways in which one can express them, and the idea that you can look at the world and learn things, that's something we are designed to enjoy, both at the learning side and the teaching side. So to be an intellectual means, at least in part, you get to give extra weight to that kind of stuff. And for me, that's a very important value. I don't know what to tell my grandkids and my great grandkids yet to be in terms of finding a partner. But I know that I like people who like to think. And there are loads of people, uh, and this is legitimate, who think I worked so hard. I was a child and I had to master this. I had to master skills. I had to master social relationships. I had to raise my kids. And now, I am of an age where I know what I like to do. I'm in a job that I feel comfortable in. I know how I want to spend my weekends. I'm with somebody who makes me feel good. And I don't need to learn anything else now until the world changes me. I'm at a good place and I want to do it. That would never be me. I would always want to read another book, hear somebody else's new idea, try to learn a new something. That would be me. So do I want people like that in my life? Yes. So advice for, you know, the the spouses, as I think I said to you before, I would look for a partial overlap. Right? For me, I want somebody who is an intellectual, but it wouldn't have to be someone whose intellectual life were exactly the same as mine. But if the person, didn't care about intellectual things, that could be a nice friend. I have friends like that. They live here, some of them, in Winchester Gardens, but they couldn't be a life partner. There's you got to be enough alike on things that matter that you can be happy for each other as they proceed and sometimes make them work together. And you have to be different enough that you can be saying, "Oh, I just read this," or "I just had this idea," or "Let me ask you this question," and drive each other to do something else good. Is that?
Yes. Well, you mentioned living there, um, which brings me to my new topic, which is, well, you've mentioned that you don't internally feel old despite the number. It's just a number. Um, and I love that. I find it inspiring. I appreciate that, and I see that in you. Um, and I wonder how your current living situation affects you. It changes perhaps your perception of yourself because you're in an environment where people around you are old. They're in various states of aging. They're in various states of decline. Many of them. I hear the stories coming from you, and I can imagine that might feel heavy or make you reflect on things in a different way.
Yeah. Um, there are ways to make friendships when you are going through the first 60 years of your life. I'm not saying for everybody. I'm talking about people who grew up in a family, an intact family, and um, and then formed an intact family. I'm not trying to guess how friendship works for people who are single parents or they have no siblings or but once upon a time it was statistically common to come from an intact family and then create an intact family. And when you're little, you meet kids who live around you, and then you meet kids in your classrooms. And then there are people you meet because they share, you're both on this team, or you're both, or your parents have friends and their kids, but when your parents have friends of around their age. And, so it's sort of a normal way. I mean, I remember there was a time in my life when it seemed to me I was going to bar mitzvahs every other week, right? Because I was a Jew in New York and I was of a certain age. So I was going to bar mitzvahs all the time. Then there was a time when I was going to weddings all the time, and now I'm at a stage where I'm going to memorial services all the time. As far as friends go, you made friends over those kids in your neighborhood or who were in your classroom or who had shared activities or with whom you raised your children because they had, there were people you met at work. There were natural activities that you shared that made for friendship. That's not here. That's one of the reasons that I find it so important to try to have dinner with people on a regular basis. Because even if it's boring to complain about the food again, it's something that we can share. And it's sort of natural. And to feel that you have a friend is so valuable. At least I feel that. And so you got to do stuff. So as you may know, you do know that I said we need to use technology better here. And so, I've been elected to the resident council and they said, great, we'll have a technology committee. You're the chair. And as soon as it became obvious that I was the chair of the technology committee, people whom I don't really know, but I mean, we all recognize each other because we're walking the same corridors, would walk up to me and say, hey, I heard you can fix my phone for me. Um, I can, but I can't allow myself to do that because around here, there will be 50 people who will need that, and I will not have a life. So once upon a time, I was able to value myself for what made me sort of special. My students told me they loved my courses, thank goodness. My colleagues respected my research. My spouse respected my ideas. Around here, I have to say sometimes, thank you very much. But no, I don't have time for that right now. And that's not the kind of thing you say to a friend. So friendship has a different meaning. And even though I've been here now 3.5 years, and so I've known some people for 3.5 years, it's not like knowing the people whose kids grew up with my kids. It's not like the colleagues with whom I shared a department for 43 years. I mean,
And yet, I hear you referring to a more Buddha-like state of mind where you've developed this patience. And I would surmise your ability to understand somebody else's position or place in life is also important at this point because I don't know that you've probably ever lived in a more diverse group of people intellectually, physically. It requires a lot of patience. You have to find a level of kindness that probably is somewhat novel.
yeah, you probably would understand that as well as anybody in our family because of what you did the day I met you. I mean, your profession was helping a whole range of people from youngsters who had a stroke or an accident to old people who are just declining. learn how to do things and with their mouths and their lungs. And yeah, you probably do understand that.
Yeah, I can imagine it taps into something entirely different for you and you're growing in ways you're not even aware of. But I
Well,
would imagine
of course, if there are ways that I'm not aware of them, I'm not aware of them. So I can't, I can't answer that
that's
question.
true.
But I can
That's,
say that I'm very aware that the whole notion of what patience is has grown for me. But I mean, sometimes patience is okay. I know I'm due there such and such a time, but take a couple of deep breaths. You can wait. That's a kind
yeah,
of active patience. And I guess I've got that. But what I'm most astonished by and is that I realize I don't have to do that anymore. I just wait. It's not like, okay, I'm going to be patient and wait. I just wait when someone who has real articulation problems wants to say something, I'll just listen. I mean, we happen to have a dinner mate, um, whom I and sometimes I'll just turn to the spouse and say, "I'm so sorry. Could you help me?" And sometimes the spouse has to say, "I didn't understand either." And my heart breaks for this person.
yeah,
It
yeah,
really does. But I never feel impatient about it. It's just, you know,
yeah.
yeah,
Well,
that's a gift, I guess, that,
I think it is. I think it is. And I think the people around you benefit from that.
well, I think I benefit from their patience too. I know that I can be demanding and sometimes abrasive. And most people around here seem to be glad to see me, even though I'm still me.
Well, my next question is, I personally like to think of concepts of the afterlife, not to get too dark here, but I like to think about this and what that might be like. I like movies about this, I like books about this. Do you have a concept of what you think, I mean, as an atheist, what the afterlife might look like?
Yeah, I'm trying to find a way to say this that will not seem insulting to people. There are things that I do not believe to be true that I understand are important to be held to be true for a host of reasons. I've thought a lot about this issue. To be more specific in relation to what you said, I don't believe in an afterlife. Um, I think when the bus hits me, it's just like a gust of wind putting out a candle.
It just goes dark.
It just, well, it won't look dark to me. There won't be
Well,
any me.
figuratively.
Yeah, right. I mean, no, I'm not trying to disagree with you. I'm not trying to be
No,
argumentative. I'm just
we
saying
have
that,
no way of knowing.
you
So,
know, right, where does your lap go when you stand up? I mean, a lap is a concept, and the lap didn't go anywhere. You stood up, and there's no lap anymore. And I, I just think that when I'm gone, I'm gone. To me, the more pressing question, so I don't think about an afterlife. I wish I could. I mean, 58 years is not a long enough marriage for me. I wish I could believe that there's something that I could do or mom could do that, 100 years from now, we'd still be able to hug each other. But I don't. I realize that's an emotional urge, but that's not enough to make me think that's how the universe is constructed.
well, do me a favor. If one day in the far future you get to the other side and something's happening that surprises you, send us a message.
I will indeed. I'll
My mom
certainly.
and I have the plan that her message will be a hummingbird. She will send me hummingbirds.
Wow.
So we'll decide on our thing. So I know it's you.
Wow. What a great premise, Judy. My goodness. You know,
She likes hummingbirds. So I said, okay. I mean, I don't see them very often. So send them to me and I'll know it's you.
wow, I love that. I mean, you do know that I organize a monthly discussion group here, which is becoming quite popular. Um, I wonder if we could shape that into a question. What what would you send back to let people know you were on the other side?
I love concept. I love this idea.
Wow. Hmm.
Yeah.
As far as what I will be or you will be or what the message will be, I don't know. Huh. You're really making me think about one of the reasons I think that it hit me so hard just now is that I had been thinking in anticipation of this conversation, or what are ways of thinking that have changed for me over the course of my life. And I remember at a certain point learning about the concept of the Renaissance man.
Mhm.
And I thought, that's cool. That's what I want to be. I don't know whether I'll be a this who knows those other things or that who does those, but I want people to be able to say, boy, you know, he's got all of this stuff mastered. I want it to be more important to say it for myself. Um, and I still think it's kind of cool to be able to be Renaissance man, somebody who is the world's greatest X, but X means that he doesn't know a thing about anything else. He may be happy, good for him, but um, I kind of like a man for all seasons. Um, Toward that end, I was thinking, you know, Aristotle, all these different things that he wrote. Plato, all these different things that he was concerned with, morality, ethics, aesthetics, I mean, physics. And I thought, wow, if I could write a book, that would be the afterlife. I would have immortality. And then I realized that between Aristotle and Plato and Shakespeare, we don't know the names of anybody. I mean, we actually know some names, but most people who write books, they write the book and that's the end of that. And probably, although I've written some stuff that has been of some use, certainly 100 years from now, nobody is going to go back to read my books. And I'm working on one right now. And I thought it's happened to me each day. Should I keep going now or go and spend time with mom? And I realized that as much as I'd like to write another book, the intellectual life, have something new, contribute to society, and be inventive, all of those things. If the world has one less book by Eric Rabkin, but I get to spend that time with my wife after the wind blows out the flame, I won't know the damn difference. So spend the time with your wife. Um, I I think that maybe I'm answering or responding to three or four of your questions at once here, but um, but
Well,
but it's been different. That's something that's different about my life here now. But the things that I valued, I do. But there are other things, as I see my friends declining, I have to think, enjoy them while you may. In Childhood's End by Arthur Clarke, what happens is this gives it away the ending. If you've never read it, sorry, spoiler alert isn't right. This is a spoiler. Um, at the end, all of the young people transform into some huge energy being collectively. Their parents are the last generation of human beings, or they are the last generation of human beings, and then they become that. The um, dedication of the book is to your children, enjoy them while you may. And of course, what he means is, that your children will outgrow you. You know, it's not that they won't be human, but eventually they won't be children anymore. So if you want to have children, think of them as children, but eventually they will be gone. But now what I'm thinking of is, yeah, sure, that's true, man. But you were young when you wrote that, Arthur. Um, I'm looking around at my friends, and I'm looking at you, and I'm looking at your sons. And I don't know what the hell is going to happen, but I am reminded every day that something can happen that we don't want to anybody. So that idea, enjoy them while you may, that is ever more powerful for me.
Well, I've really enjoyed covering all of the reflections, and I always like chatting with you. And I feel like that's probably a pretty good place to wrap up, but I wonder if there are any closing thoughts or comments you might want to make before we do.
The idea of a family seems to be looked at in a child-centered way. As people might come together, heterosexual, homosexual, I'm not, people might come together, and then when they get a child, they say, now I have a family. And then when the kid gets to a certain point and then goes and joins someone or someone's else, um, you talk about your family of origin and your new family. But what I don't hear people talking about very much is the idea of somebody coming in from the side, and that's you. I mean, I know some things about your life, and I met your father, and I had the pleasure of spending some time with your mother, whom I think is a great person. But I know I'm not your father, and I'm not your spouse, and you're not my child, but you are, from my viewpoint, fully, I mean, my family wouldn't be my family if I didn't have you. So I keep learning that there are other things that can be good in life that are worth cherishing. And I want to say, you are one of them specifically, and as an example of something else that people don't talk about. So I love you and I thank you.
Thank you. I love you too. Thank you so much for the compliment, and thank you for your time and for this discussion. And we will talk again.
Good.